serious, Reddit. What situation or issue caused you to walk away from a friendship without another word to your friend again? Story one: my best mate in high school. Top bloke, shirt off your back kind of fella. We experienced everything together, all the pre- and post-pubescent stuff. First around with illegal stuff, drugs, drinks, you name it. At the time, both of us were heavily involved in trafficking weed through our respective schools. And due to my size, I was a debt collector of sorts for kids who had stiffed the local dealers. Then through an unfortunate series of events, I cleaned myself up and dropped anything that wasn't legal. Doug, though, he was having too much fun doing his thing. We still caught up as often, but this time I was just on the not shooting gear or smoking dope. He would always ask, I would always decline. This pissed Doug off to the point he cut contact with me one day, really abruptly, didn't feel the need to pursue a reason. Fast forward about 10 years, Mima rings me, tells me that Doug had rocked up at my folks asking to catch up and bury the hatchet as he was clean. So she gave him the address, and he was coming over. The missus didn't know about Doug and was fast asleep anyway, so I just left the door open a crack so I could hear his car pull up. Had a real bad feeling it, though, to the point where I grabbed the pacifier, a length of thick red gum ID fashioned into a cudgel from my high school woodwork days, that I usually keep near the door, and slid it hidden from sight near the couch. Still to know why. Moments later, hear a car pull up. I go outside to meet him, and could immediately tell something was up. Firstly, Doug was flying, pupils like 5-cent pieces, so much for being clean. Second, instead of his crappy Holden we used to bomb around Brody in, he was driving some old Volvo. Now I know his family was the same as mine, pretty much bogan welfare and diehard Holden lovers. So it struck as odd, as we used to nick a few cars for insurance jobs back in the day, too. I haven't thought about that in years. Anyway, after an awkward handshake, I motion him around the back to the shed, basically my man cave. Hit the lights, grab a beer, and toss one over to him. He had had a rough time. Thin as a whip now, a couple of dodgy neck and facial tats. He was pretty fidgety, I guess from the gear he was obviously on. He was rambling about his thin inside, not surprising, how his family had all moved back up north, and how he was clean now. I stopped him there and called him out, basically said bullshit. Can't remember exactly what I said. He insisted it was from cold medicine or something, but the whole time he was looking around the shed, but only at certain things, expensive things, power tools, gym kit, my gun safe in particular. I didn't like where this was going, so told him we can catch up later on the week or something. I gotta go to bed. He was cool with that, smiled, patted me on the back, and jumped back in his car after I walked him out. I stick me head in to say, see ya. Check the ignition, of course. There was no key. A couple of days later, I note the gun safe had pry marks on the paint. Now, this is locked up good, solid steel, anchored to the concrete. It ain't opening unless I open it. Aussie law is pretty hardcore with that. Call up the cops. Tell them what's happened. They come around and have a squiz. I let them know I'm pretty sure I know who tried to open it. Gave him Doug's full name. Left it at that. Haven't heard from the bloke in near 15 years. Frankly, don't care if I do. Our daughters went to preschool together, and so we started socializing with play dates 2 or 3 times a week for about a year. The kids would play, and we would drink coffee and chat. When I had to take my husband for surgery, she offered to watch my kid. It was the very first time Shed ever watched her without me there. I came back a few hours later to find my 3-year-old sitting in a corner, looking as if Shed been crying. The ex-friend launched into this really detailed story about how my daughter had repeatedly tried to take a toy from her daughter, and so Shed had to give her a timeout, and my daughter was upset at the discipline, got my kid in the car and asked what had happened. She said that she and her friend had argued over a toy. Ex-friend had gotten right in her face and screamed at her, so close that she had sprayed my daughter's face with spittle. Then ex-friend slapped her and slammed her into the wall. I pulled over and felt the back of my kid's head. There was a big lump on it, so we turned around and drove straight to the police station. The police interviewed me and my daughter. I later found out that they sent officers to interview ex-friend, and on the strength of their observations, Child Protective Services was brought in. She had been beating her daughters fairly regularly with a belt. There were lots of injuries in various stages of healing, including a broken rib. Ex-friend got a suspended sentence and lost custody of her 2 children to her mother-in-law until she worked through an anger management and parenting program. I don't know if she ever completed it. Hey, Race, the worst part, one spent 2 or 3 hours a week with that woman for a year, and I had no clue she abused her children. None. Nothing she said ever raised red flags. I never saw her threaten or physically discipline her kids in public. Her daughters were very quiet and well-behaved, maybe a little too eager to please adults, but nothing really remarkable. She never left marks in visible places. Story 2 John has enlightened me to the white man's plight and to the threat of the Jew. I cannot abide my brother betting a Jew without intervening. If you continue to see that woman, I will kill both of you. Probably the darkest part of my life. This was my best friend of 11 years, a surrogate brother, an integral part of my childhood, and had threatened to kill me and an innocent woman because of her religion, There were no classic warning signs, no slippery slope, at least that I saw. He just started hanging out with some kid, and a few weeks later his head was shaved, and he was a big fan of eugenics. I haven't talked to him since. Chris, if you're reading, I'm sorry I wasn't a strong enough friend to get you out of there. I'm sorry I couldn't keep you for whatever made you so hateful. I hope you've come past your anger, and I hope you're happy. I still think of you often. You are the reason I survived as long as I have. Story 3. Growing up, I didn't have many close friends. I was a bit of a social outcast, a bit of a loner, and it wasn't until after college when I truly met friends whom I cared about like family. The sad part is I cared about them like family, but it seemed like they didn't feel the same way about me. Flash forward about 10 years. I've had these friends for a long time, and I consider them my very best friends. My dad became suddenly ill. I contact my friends, give them a heads up that my dad wasn't doing well. They said, whatever you need, we're there for you, man. My dad quickly gets worse and eventually passes away. I, of course, give my friends a heads up, tell them he passed. I get the so sorry, man, and the like. I then pass word about the dates and times for the funeral and wake that didn't show up. I can understand if they had work or no car, and I had a couple of friends whom honestly and wholeheartedly couldn't make it. I also had friends who did, but these close friends couldn't even have bothered to at least call to say they couldn't go or apologize for not going. This single action by them killed a 10-year-long friendship. The sad part is they went out of their way when another friend's mother passed away years ago. But for my dad, nothing. Story 4. One of my best friend's girlfriend that I had known for 3 years, very good friend with both of them, had this crazy thought that I was in love with her and tried to steal her from him. He believed her, and so did a lot of my other very good friends. I told him, if that what you think of me as a person after all these years, then off. This was during a party after we graduated, her for manipulating my friends. Story 5. When I found out, he was messaging all my friends privately saying that if they stay friends with me, they will up in life because it'll take them down a bad path. I honestly don't know why he thought this, but I never spoke to him again after that. Story 6. She accidentally emailed me when she meant to email someone else. In the email, she was talking about me. I deleted it, cried, never talked to her again. Story 7. I stopped him and another friend from taking advantage of an underage girl who was passed out. Things ended up getting physical between me and them, and I walked out of their house after getting the girl back to a safe place. Haven't seen them since, and never hope to. Story 8. This happened a few days ago. A close friend of mine said he couldn't trust me anymore, and we couldn't be friends anymore just because I didn't talk to him for 5 days. He didn't let me explain that in reality, in those 5 days, I was recovering from a suicide attempt. Story 9. I thought that I loved her. We had been friends with benefits for 2 years. She initiated the kissing, and I had taken her home. As she got out of the car that I drove her 40 miles just to get home in, I ran out to give her a goodbye hug, which she graciously accepted. Then she proceeded to tell her mutual best friend that I came at her. She was genuinely scared, and she didn't know if she should press charges or not. Quote, I thought he was going to rape me. End quote. I wish that was the actual end, but there was one more time that she called. A couple weeks later, she told me she was stranded far away from her apartment, and she needed some help. While I was furious that she had done this to me, I decided to help my friends, and I picked her up. I didn't talk to her at all. And then my real best friend suggested, hey, why don't we get something to eat first? Because he didn't know what had happened between the chick and I. Everyone loved the idea, except me. We went to a restaurant, and I literally pretended to have an important phone call and walked around the neighborhood, too sick to my stomach to be near the table, until my best friend called me and said we should get going. We dropped the chick off, but before we did, she said, hey, I just want to be honest with you. And she then told me that the reason she was stranded was because she had went to a person's house to have with them, and she needed a ride home. I told the driving friend, let's get out of here. I never spoke to her again, even though she tried to text and Facebook me many times. Story 10. Found out that a couple of friends of mine had a secret hobby they were keeping behind my back. They were basically pretending to be interested in depressed, insecure girls who were depressed and overweight with acne. So they would send them nudes and then turn around and embarrass and humiliate them. That's just cruel. It wasn't limited to just overweight, insecure girls, but that was their main target because it was more fun to pick on people with low self-esteem for them. I'm a pretty laid-back and easygoing guy. I will do favors for friends and go out of my way to help. I had one friend who would take advantage of those traits. They'll let it go for a while, but if the taking never stops and favors are never returned, they'll walk away without ever looking back. The last straw for me was when a friend asked if I wanted to come over after a birthday party we had for a friend. He said he would drive, and I could leave my car there and get in the morning as it was right on the way to work, so I said sure, and went with on the way home. He stopped to fill up and demanded gas money since he drove. He didn't ask, he demanded I pay half. I just got out, closed the door, and walked away. Edit TLDR. was at the same party as a friend. We both drove to separately. He asked if I wanted to stay at his place, so I hopped in with him in his car and left mine at the party. He tried to demand I pay for half of a full tank of gas on a trip he had to make anyways. Story 11, when your best friend of 12 years decides to tell some random girl he was a pretty deep, personal secret I have that only he and my immediate family know about. She proceeded to spread it around. Needless to say, my reputation was pretty much permanently tarnished, so I had to move away. So I joined the army. Story 12, witnessed a gambling addiction swallow my friend's life up whole. Kid started innocently enough at 17. Got a fake and went to one of those casinos that really couldn't give a what age you actually were as long as you don't win. He lost every penny he had to his name up until that point. Had his fake taken from him that night too, when he got pulled over on his way home. He then swiped his brother's debit card one day and ran it dry on an online casino. His parents banned his IP from the internet to prevent this in the future. So in turn, he goes out, tells me he needs 100 for emergency, and goes out and buys a shitty laptop with it. He then swipes his mom's credit card and runs a 4K tab on that again on an online casino. Fast forward about a year now, I got over the whole laptop thing since I was working and didn't really care too much about 100. He tells me and a bunch of other people he's doing a fake ID order. We're all about to go to college, so it made sense to get in on this. Give him the money, take the photos, everything seems smooth. Wrong. The kid takes the money, about 5K of his friend's money, buys himself a fake, then goes to the casino and loses it all. After this, I basically told him to go himself, but got begged by both mine and his parents to stay in touch because he needed support now more than ever. That same summer before college, kid decides he wants to make another casino run, asked me to chill one day. Long story short, kid had to ask me if I wanted to rob a house with him. I got in a fight with the kid, and from what I understand, he actually still did it, didn't get caught either. Worst part about it is, from what I understand, he robbed his grandparents since he knew where they kept their valuables. I don't talk to this kid anymore, but from what I understand, he later took his tuition money for college or something along those lines and basically gambled all of it. All I know now is that he's a college dropout and works at Burger King. The part that keeps me up at night is that part of me thinks I could have done more. Like, I could have just taken his keys, so couldn't go to the casino. Or I could have told his parents, who were extremely good people, when and where he was heading when I knew. I don't even know what to think of the kid anymore, because he truly was a great friend at first, but something just clicked one day, and the kid just couldn't stop gambling. I really thought he had hope when he went to college. As his first 2 years, he really did well. But his junior year last year, something went awfully wrong, and it all fell apart. I changed some of the info here, because I didn't have the heart to completely put someone's life out there for karma. But I hope someone out there reads this, and maybe it helps them keep someone you thought would be your best friend forever when you were a kid. Story 13, one time, when I was around 12, me, my best friend, my older cousin, and my best friend's older brother were hanging out. My cousin was good friends with my best friend's older brother, so we were all hanging out, playing basketball, and my cousin mentioned to everyone that he had gotten it from a guy before. I already knew this because I was that guy, so my best friend and his older brother were curious and asked him who it was. That's when he looked right at me. He stared at me for a solid 3 seconds. My best friend and his older brother knew at that point. My cousin may as well have came out and said it. All I remember is that they kept asking me and wouldn't drop it, and I literally had no words to say about it. I've never been so humiliated in my entire life before or since that moment. I went inside and told my mom that I really wanted to go home, and we left shortly afterwards. I avoided my best friend like the plague, and I moved out of state a few months later. I was going to move anyway due to something completely unrelated. I couldn't look him in the eyes, him knowing that about me. Story 14, after several failed attempts to cheer her up, comfort her during a mental breakdown, I asked her what I could possibly do to help her, and she essentially told me to figure it out. It was a long-distance friendship, and up to that point, she had been showing more noticeable signs of mental instability, and it was becoming a burden to talk to her. Because I became the scapegoat for her problems, I couldn't deal with it anymore, so I stopped talking to her. About 4 years later, she sent me a message saying she couldn't remember why we stopped talking, but that she was sorry for whatever happened. After going through some of her social media, she seemed a lot happier, healthier. So I welcomed her back into my life. We don't talk often, but I'm happy this story has a happier ending. Story 15, my best friend from elementary school moved away in the kids of 5th grade. I had a terrible time adjusting, but was eager to hear from him again. Over the course of our respective school careers, he would come down almost every summer, and we would hang out at each other's places of residence. He was staying with a cousin. Eventually, our reunions stopped 1 year while I was living away from home, but I grew expectant for the next. We had been friends for so long. Why couldn't we wait a bit longer when he showed up the next summer? Everything had changed between us. We had grown into two complete different people that couldn't connect. Our last physical conversation detailed our plans for dinner. Our last text conversation went like this: me, hey, did you call me? Him, no. Oh, okay, cool. Just checking. Growing apart is a scary thing, but happens. Story 16, my best friend of 2 years began making racist comments to me about myself and my family out of the blue and refused to acknowledge that she had done anything wrong. From that incident, I finally learned how to stand up for myself, and I am no longer treated like a doormat. So every cloud has a silver lining, I guess. Story 17, had a big crush on a girl since high school. We ended up getting closer, and I fell for her hard. She was never interested in me because we were better as friends, which is bullshit. Every so often, I would try to move on from her, but when I did, she'd say some bullshit like, I'm starting to like you. I don't know what will happen in the future when I would ask her if we'd end up together, some ridiculous nonsense, but I was stupid enough to believe it and go back to her. She had different boyfriends throughout that time, and every time she did, I ceased to exist. Only when things between them got rough, she would come to me, so I figured it was for attention. I always wondered why she kept picking the biggest douchebags and going back to them again and again, just to be hurt again and again, but then it occurred to me that I was doing the same thing with her. Every time she broke my heart like an idiot, I gathered the pieces and put them right back in her hand. So a few days ago, I sent her a message, basically saying, she'll no longer be part of my life. We're done. Don't contact me or anything. It's been a tough few days. My entire high school memory was all her. I went to my brother's wedding with her, for Christ's sake. I can't even look at another girl without thinking of her. But no, as soon as I realized that, I was done. Not worth dealing with anymore. Story 18, in 1997. When I was 12, I got into using chat rooms online with other people from across the world in Aussie, and back then, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. In 1999, while on IRC, I started to speak to a guy called Chris. He was a year older than me. He lived in the Los Angeles area, and he was so cool at the time. He was in a band, had piercings, was a rocker, skateboard, etc., and we would talk for hours every day. I'd get home from school to tell him about my day, and it'd be the evening for him too, but the day before, I'd even say that he shaped my teen years, as he inspired my music taste in TV shows, and gave me a lot of advice. I wouldn't say we dated, but I'd have considered him my best friend. Sometime in 2000, he told me that he would be coming on vacation to Australia in January 2001. And as you could have imagined, I was over the moon. My city is a popular tourist destination a few hours away from Sydney, where he was staying for a couple of weeks. So over many months, we planned what we would do, where we would go, and everything. The time came. We didn't speak much over the course of a few days, with him being on vacation and all that, but we planned the day we would meet and how I was to be picked up by the car his parents had rented on their vacation. The day was here, and I was so excited. I got ready in the morning and waited for the day to be picked up by him and his parents. Day turned into night, but I stayed there, hoping that had simply been delayed. The following day, I waited again. I sent email after email to him, MSN message after message, but he didn't respond to me. Chris never came. The following morning after that, I called the home number he gave me a while ago, and I had written down I never called him, because that's when call costs overseas were sky high, to try and see if there was anyone at his house who could give me any info on their whereabouts, because I was worried. He answered the phone. After me going crazy on him, me crying, him beating around the bush, what I basically found out was that I had been had. It all seemed to be some sort of sick joke, and he had never even left the U.S. The vacation, the plans we made, was all a lie. I never knew why he did it either, and to this day, I still don't. But after that point, I decided that we maybe shouldn't talk anymore. But 14 years down the line, I do occasionally wonder what he's up to, or if he'll ever read this. TLDR, I was severely trolled by an American who wanted to meet up with me, but happened to be 8,000 miles from me instead. I was living as a roommate in my friend's apartment. First, he wanted to make a deal with me. His idea was that I should apply for a place in an elite student dormitory because I had a decent chance to get it, but not move in, remain in his apartment as a tenant, pay him rent, and he would use my room in the dormitory as an office for his startup company and give me a six-pack of beer for this. I told him that first, operating a company in a student dormitory will surely attract some unwanted attention, especially because 3 students were living in each, and the other 2 students would be a bit upset when a company started working in their room. Second, it would be the business of the century to have a free room where I do not live and rent another room from him just for shits and giggles. I asked him if he thought that from then on I will live in his flat for free. He reassured me that he thought that we are so good friends that he thought that I will pay him rent continuously, but give him my dormitory room for free to use, after I set him to go himself. His next idea was to evict me from his flat, but did not tell me in advance because he was afraid that I will beat him up. We were friends for 10 years at that point, and I never hurt or threatened him in any way during this decade. After this, I told him to go himself and have not spoken to him in a decade. Story 19, one of my ex-girlfriends and I were really close friends for 2 years before we started dating. We were together for a year and a half, and then she cheated on me. A few months after the breakup, she asked if we could still be friends, and I told her no. A friend is someone I know I can trust, and I can't trust you anymore. That was the last thing I ever said to her, even though we went to the same college. Story 20, he posted a huge ranted on my FB wall about how Obama was the Antichrist, and how he couldn't wait for someone to kill him. And if they didn't do it soon, he would. I blocked him on everything. Nobody needs that level of crazy in their life. Story 21, her boyfriend raped me, and she defended him. I'm pretty sure they are still together. This was almost 3 years ago. A few months back, she texted me and asked how I was doing. I told her to off. Story 22 repeatedly told me to shut up when around other people. When I made an issue over it, he accused me of being a little and reminded people that one of my parents helped me pay my rent, even though he lives at home. Story 23, my friend from middle school left my school for another one and immediately became engulfed in drugs. He was one of my best friends, but once I found out, I had to break off connection so I didn't become influenced. I'm in college now and can say I'm happy I made that decision. Story 24, this has happened more than twice to me, but it'll spare you. The first time, my now ex-best friend of years lied to my face, sleeping with my boyfriend. I walked away from that situation and never spoke to her again. The second time was about my other best friend of 7 years. She was being abused in her relationship, and I told her about it. Her boyfriend pushed her in the bathroom, and she had to have staples in her back. And that's where I stepped in and told her he was abusive, and she told me if you can't support me, get the out of my life, and then I noped the out of that friendship. Story 25, I was at a college friend's apartment, visiting with him and his girlfriend, no booze or anything, just hanging out. The two of them started arguing over questions he was asking about her ex, to the point where he got so mad he slapped her, and she slapped him back. But then, he punched her in the arm really hard and slammed out of the room before I could say or do anything, except to help her put ice on the place that was turning black and blue with pain. That was the end of that friendship. Then and there, his anger management issues exceeded our threshold of ability to trust or in any way accept. From that point on, she and I became much closer friends, and I helped her through her tears to eventual better times. Story 26, a FB friend posted a meme that said support breast cancer and featured a young lady in panties flinging off her bra. I tease him by asking, so we're supporting the cancer now and sexualizing breast cancer. Make a new meme saying support testicular cancer. Go commando. I actually thought he was being cheeky in posting it. He messaged me that I was on his parade. He called me a bully and an inbox rapist because I was astonished inbox rape is a thing now. Mute feature. I foolishly kept replying to his vitriol to apologize and point out the funny wording. His crescendo was to say I was worse than the lady he dated for years who cheated on him, gave him an STD, made several false police reports of abuse against him. I met this dude once years ago. What? TL Dar accidentally pissed a FB friend off that I met IRL once years ago. He called me an inbox rapist and said I was worse than the woman he had an actual relationship with who gave him an STD. 1010 would block again. Story 27, I called Dizzy Rascal a talentless, which enraged my friend who disagreed. That was the last time we spoke. In hindsight, it remains both correct and hilarious. Story 28, I started dating this girl at the beginning of HS. He got close to her, asked for her number. This was when numbers weren't just handed out willy-nilly. I broke it off because it was obvious he was into her and was moving in. I was all brothers before hoes, not going to let this girl come between us. Surprise, surprise, he starts dating her immediately. Unsurprisingly, I'm bitter about it. About 6 months later, I confronted him, asking if he would do the same thing again. His response, yeah, if I really liked her, I would. Wouldn't I stopped being friends with him that day, and we've never spoken since. Dickbag used to be my best friend until those events. A friend I had never wanted to do anything that I wanted to. If we agreed to my plans, they'd be canceled and rearranged to something she wanted to do. After I didn't get into the program I wanted in school, I wanted to sit around mope all day and watch New Girl. She said she'd come over and hang out, but later decided it'd be better if we go swimming. I didn't go. When I cut the line was when her and a couple other friends of mine were going to Warped Tour, and she was going to come with us. But a week or so beforehand said her schedule got changed, and she had to work. Really, she just went on a trip with her boyfriend pics on Instagram. Story 29, story time. So this guy, we'll call him Z for now, was a good friend freshman year of college. We had our friend group, and everything was awesome. Then sophomore year rolled around, and he went to Vietnam for a semester. After he came back, he was much more of an... We all kind of had a falling out, but we had already signed a lease, so me and 2 other friends would be living with him junior year. He was the worst roommate you could ask for in an apartment setting. Z always left the windows up, even when it became cold, and that always let bugs get into the apartment. I even showed him one time how one could get in, even though he had a screen, yet still left them open. I could go on, but it'll get to the point. What made me absolutely hate him and not say another word other than hey was one night after he went out to meet his little for the first time at his business fraternity. So he gets back at 3 a.m. drunk to the point where he didn't know what planet he was on. I had an early class, along with my other roommates, so we were all asleep, but were woken up by him making so much noise. Now I always lock my door, but I guess I forgot that night, and I wake up at 3:30 a.m. to an unrecognizable silhouette at the foot of my bed. As I got a clearer look, I had no idea who he was. Immediately yelled at him to GTFO and shoved him out. I immediately locked the door and could not get back to sleep. I texted my other roommates to see what was happening, but no one wanted to go out and deal with it. So morning comes around, and the apartment is trashed. There's vomit everywhere, a burned pizza sitting in the oven, and one of the bathrooms completely unusable. It turns out he brought home a friend who was also blacked out, who was also the person in my room. ZS friend then went into our bathroom, turned on the sink, and left, nearly flooding the place. I guess they got hungry and put a pizza in the oven, but fell asleep before taking it out. Thankfully, another roomie went out and took the pizza out before the apartment burned down. So Z was nowhere to be found that morning, and everyone was pissed at him. So we text him and leave him a note saying, clean this up ASAP. We all get back from class, and the apartment is still a mess, and we see the results of the most half-assed cleanup. Z had left for a camping trip that weekend and left a majority of the mess because his friend made most of it. He never even apologized for that night. So the other roommates and I had to clean up the rest because we aren't animals and enjoy a clean apartment. To this day, I hate him and have never said a word. TLDR former friend gets completely wasted and brings home an equally drunk friend. They proceed to nearly flood the apartment, left a pizza in the oven, vomited everywhere, and did a half-ass cleanup before leaving for the weekend. Story 30, my best friend and I once had this huge fight. It started like this back in high school. She had this boyfriend that her brother hooked her up with. At first it seemed good, I suppose, but as time went on, things began to change. Every few months she'd come on the bus crying about something horrid that he did. Of course sorry were given, and then they were good again, but soon it became every month, then every week, and eventually every day. His transgressions also become worse as the time went by. He felt as if he could treat her like a toy and play with her when he wanted, then cast her aside when he didn't. Me and her other friend were very peeved. We had formulated a plan. I normally would have refused, but I felt the situation was dire. That being said, I was still guilty, no question. The plan: steal the boyfriend's number without her knowledge. Very easy. Then the other friend would pose a single chick and chat him up. The boyfriend said that he was single and was hot for the new chick, so we used this as proof to show her what he is and that she deserved better. She found out I stole the number and she was pissed. I didn't fight her on it. She was right. We never spoke for a whole year. I didn't even think of her as I was pretty sure it was over, but according to all her other friends, she still always spoke about missing me and forgiving me. She came back and said, and I quote, "Hey, Ambigito too, I miss you and I was an idiot. I would like to see you again." She is one of those people for who calling themselves an idiot is a really big deal. We're best friends again now.